Okay, welcome to Free Association, a conversation about metaphysics. This is going to be. I'm waiting for a friend of mine, Dr. Lenny Time, to come online. So, what I'm going to do is just talk to myself for a few minutes and see how that works. And then when Lenny comes on, I'll invite him in and we'll have a conversation. But yeah, we're having a conversation in the philosophy groups that I'm part of at the moment about the role of will in humanity. So, does will define humanity? Does desire define humanity or not? Is the question. And it's part of the Western magical tradition that it does, but that doesn't mean that it does. It means it's part of the tradition. That's all it means. Tradition is just tradition. Doesn't make it real. So I happen to think that it's a useful idea and it's a useful concept that can be applied in lots of different ways and lots of different cultural styles and cultural kind of affectations have been added to it. But will or desire or commanding, um, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't remember the word that I'm looking for. Commanding and declaring and yeah, decree. Decree is the word I'm looking for. So decrees are important in this because you have to command the universe to do your will. So you have to be in a position of authority for this to work, for any kind of magical idea to work. You need some kind of authority and certainty about the outcome, which I have a little bit of trouble with certainty because I've got a lot of doubt going on. There are some things I don't doubt, but a lot of things that I do doubt are just a little bit, and a little bit can be enough to knock the whole thing off, kill that a little bit. So you've got to do it without doubt. You've got to be certain about your outcome. You've got to feel your outcome as if it's already happened. Basically, I'm getting that from Neville Goddard. Right, so Lenny's just arrived, I think. Let me use the right. Did I just knock him off? I don't know. What's going on? There we go. I've forgotten how to work this. It's been a week and I've forgotten what I'm doing.
Well, that's okay. There's no doubt that I would be here.
All right, yeah, no, I agree. I agree. You're a fixture on a Thursday afternoon, Lenny.
It's
No, that's good.
interesting. I've never read into or watched Neville Goddard, but I totally believe with the philosophy that you've been expounding. Um, if you believe something and you act as though it's done, it always seems to be done, and you get much farther than if you question something, proceed anyway, then your questions sort of stop you from
Yeah,
moving out and being, getting what you want. It's interesting because at one point I started questioning science, and when I started thinking about water, I decided that water did a lot more things than people assigned to it. But once I did that, water no longer worked the way it works for everybody else. For me, it needed the special handling that I give it, pouring it frequently, putting it through a device that spins it, structuring it. And so now I believe that water is structured and it holds memory, and that you can get to that memory by jostling it, making it so that it has to come together by van der Waal forces and charge interactions rather than be randomly mixed from your tap. And tap water is really not good for folks, but if you structure your tap water, it's just fine.
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking to the philosophy group about the interconnectedness of the mental and physical space, and they a lot of the people in the group see everything as separate, but it's useful to separate them when you're talking about them. But in truth, the interconnection is, to me, the interconnection is water, because if water holds memory, it's got some kind of mind status, it's got some kind of mind quality to it, and it's physical. So that's the connection between the mental space and the physical space, which makes sense.
Yeah, I think that chemistry, my field, is totally made up. There is no reality on the level of atoms and molecules that matches the theory that we have as humans of water, three or more magnitudes, orders of magnitude greater than the water molecule. But if you take H2O, an oxygen with two hydrogens attached to it, it's got 3 degrees of freedom. It's got the symmetrical stretch where both hydrogens are out or both hydrogens are in at the same time. Look at it like breathing. It's got
Right.
the asymmetrical stretch where one is out and the other side is in. And there's two modes of it depending on which side, but you can't tell them apart. So it's just twice as much at double signal. And then there's the bond angle for the hydrogen oxygen hydrogen bond. And that's continually shifting. So the 3 degrees of freedom are enough to allow it memory. But when it's in the big ocean of salt water, I don't think it remembers much. It's just part of the collective water species. When it's out in something, a human, a plant, even a river, the conditions are so much different that it remembers the conditions, especially if it was required to do work. In our body, 60 to 70% water. Some water is structural, some water is fluid. The stuff in the bloodstream or in your urine, that's all fluid stuff. But if you say in your kidney, you've got a molecule of water that is interacting with kidney proteins to form the actual structure of the kidney, it's at a real twisted angle. It's not at that normal water angle of 109. And that jogs the memory. So throughout its lifetime, after it's done being structural part of the tree, it melts down, the tree goes away, the water goes back into the atmosphere, into the ground, eventually makes its way back to the ocean. And the trick is for water to escape from the ocean and get back to the form that it had been when it was part of life.
Yeah. So yeah, it's continuously searching for structure ultimately. It's looking for its own for every cycle in the rotation it goes through.
And most of the time, water can't escape the ocean. It takes a lot. It's either got to be on the surface and evaporate, or for some reason get used, like being in a fish that then gets caught and eaten. But over the millions and billions of years that structure has been around in the universe, water probably has 5 to 10 different identities and knows where it has been. And when it gets into a similar situation, reacts appropriately.
Yeah. So when it's I'm speculating here massively, but is it possible that when people start to remember past life situations, it's the water that's remembering it?
I wouldn't think so, but when you get down to the level of individual water molecules, there are so many of them in a body. Maybe it only takes one or two molecules to have previously been in a body to draw back those memories. And certainly, if you look at the way genetics works, if genetic code is transferred generationally, water should be also, because there's water attached to the genes that ATGC spiral that works has more water weight to it than weight of the AGCTs. And it's also got a lot of different structure.
Yeah, so when I'm clearing my, in immunics, there's this thing called the spiral body, which is connected to DNA. So when you clear the spiral body, you're clearing whatever it is, whatever pathology you're looking for. You're looking for it within your DNA structure, within your cellular structure. I think of it as, because it's easier to think about cells than it is about DNA for some reason for me.
Well, cells and DNA are different orders of magnitude.
Right, okay.
The cells contain DNA. The DNA doesn't contain cells, at least not the way we look at it. It's mostly strands. But those strands are not in isolation. They're tied into other DNA strands in a whole pool of structured water molecules that hold them at the right distances and allow them to make the proper bridges and fill in all the space in between that would be empty, because nature really doesn't like empty space. I think water is intelligent, has memory, and in a microcosm, individual water molecules act like individual human molecules and can talk to each other and have a circle of friends and a purpose for being. But I think once the water molecule gets into the ocean, which is basically just a salt water mix, the salts in the ocean keep the water in an undefined state that it can't think for itself. It's like if there's one frequency where water is not thinking at all, it's that state where the oxygen is adhered to a positive charged cation in the water. The hydrogens are bonded to other oxygens of water, and everything is frozen in a grid because there's too much salt. The salt forms the structure of the ocean, not the water.
Right.
Makes me wonder if water uses logic, ethics, or morality.
I can't see it there being any morality involved unless it's the morality of of atoms and electrons. And I don't know what that would be. I mean, there must be. Well, there's limitations on how things can be bonded, isn't there? So that to some degree, that's a kind of morality. It's a limit on behavior.
Yeah, and if there is a net flow of charge, it's a lot different than everything being neutralized out. And water, being a polar molecule, has an internal dipole so that it is directional. And if it's just surrounded by other water in a salt matrix, the oxygen of the water is pulled towards the cations of the salt. But if water is without salt at all, and it's just in water and there's only water around it, it seems to form its own structured state that is more of a tetrahedral. And I don't know. I think in that state, water is very powerful, and that it might even have created its own mind by having enough water molecules structured in the same vibration that it can think. Maybe not at the same scale that humans can think, but I certainly think that thinking is a function of intelligence, and intelligence is a function of life. So water in its own way is alive. It's always vibrating and always moving within its degrees of freedom. But locking it down is what integrates memory. And when it gets locked down again, it can think, compare, and do things.
Right, that kind of makes sense. Yeah.
It makes me think that on other scales of being, there are other beings that think in similar sense to humans, and that humans may be fractal throughout the scale, so that at every certain point in the scale, there is a place where human thought comes into existence, not human form. I think this human form is unique to us, but consciousness remains without the physical body. And so the thought processes that we undergo probably are conserved until they're wiped when we're reincarnated, if that's the actual process that is used for consciousness. It might be used for individual souls, but the soul and the consciousness, I think, are different things. That consciousness may be a function of soul, but soul is not a function of consciousness.
Right. I tend to work on the principle that it's about, if you believe in a process of reincarnation, you create it as you go along. So whatever it is you believe when you die, that's what you create when you, after death. Whatever it is you believe is going to happen. So that's why you can say the Egyptians were right, the Indians were right, the Chinese are right, because they're creating it themselves as they go.
You know, that could just be the trap, is that your individual belief in reincarnation brings you back into the humanity at a different point, maybe, but it keeps you alive as a human in this existence for your consciousness. So people, if it's a prison planet, people are coming back into the same prison because their previous beliefs led them to believe that this is what it was. But I don't believe anything that I've been taught anymore. I need to have firsthand experience of how it is. And if it's not how I think it is, and I don't know how it is, it'll go into a construct called the flux box, and we'll try and work around it until there's a resolution of the problem. So right now, the shape of the world is in the flux box. I don't know. It could be round. It could be flat. It depends on your perspective of how you see it. And there's more and more people believing it's flat, that the paradigm no longer forces you to take the earth as round. But if you don't take the earth as round, there's a lot of things that break down, including our concept of clock time and calendar time. But I can't tell that the earth is flying through space at 70 some thousand miles per hour. And if it was flying through space at that, wouldn't we be dragging a whole bunch of things in tow for that sort of catch our wake, just like supposedly the Earth and the other planets are in tow to the sun as the sun moves. And if that was all true, how do the constellations stay the same with the stars in the same position as the Earth is moving and changing perspective?
That's a good question. I've got no idea how that happens. What I do know is from my experimentation in my kind of way, the way I do it, if you move from being heliocentric to being geocentric, so just put the Earth at the center and then put yourself at the center of a circle on the Earth, that makes manifestation a lot easier. It makes it a much don't worry about where the sun is and whether the Earth goes around the sun. Just put yourself at the center, and it makes manifestation much easier.
Done a meditation where I put myself in the center and I extend my feet to the center of the Earth, and I extend and use that as an expansion of my human radius throughout this solar system. But now, as I look around and see other solar systems, I'm convinced that our default is round in a circle, and that something very large appears to us as a circle, and something very small appears to us as a circle, because circle is uniformly implied as one. And then you've got two that form the Vesica Pisces, and three that form like the Budweiser symbol. No, that's five. Anyway, there's a lot of different things that are subject to belief. And if you believe differently than other humans on this planet, you experience a different world than those other humans on this planet. So I've been doing a little experiment where I haven't been paying attention to the world at large, and I've just been in my own little microcosm. And it's starting to benefit me in that my microcosm is not dealing with the pressures created by paying attention to the world as created by the media. So sometimes I get caught by surprise by the things that happen, but eventually it filters in. There's no way you can live in the world and not have news of the world fit in. But News of the World was the Queen album, and it's the one where We Will Rock You was on the album.
Yeah.
So
good
stuff alluded to in music. If you listen to the words in music, I think it's really philosophical.
Yeah, some of it is definitely. A lot of it is. I've forgotten. It'll come back. Oh, I was going to talk. I know what I was going to talk about. Using Immunix to deal with paranoia. That's one of the things I've been doing this last week. Because we had this conversation in the philosophy groups, and people were telling one guy in particular was telling me I was paranoid, which I kind of am in a way, because I always I get this from my mother, I think, where she looks for the worst possible scenario, and then she'll deal with that before it happens. But it's not necessarily paranoia; it's just a safety first thing. But then it kind of is
forethought.
Yeah, but it kind of is paranoia in its own way, because you can get away with not doing that most of the time. It's only the odd time it'll turn out to be the worst possible situation, and most of the time it'll turn out to be somewhere in the middle, and every now and again you get a really good situation.
Yep. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not after you. And I spent
Absolutely.
several years on the run just because I got the sense of perception that my world wasn't safe any longer. And I can think of at least 3 specific times in life where I just disappeared from the location I was, struck out to a new place, and then started over and built up what I had from scratch. Didn't didn't take anything that I couldn't carry. And in that case, in one case, I just left the whole scenario, just disappeared, never looked back, never called back, at least not for a while. Eventually, there are things you have to take care of. And when people just disappear and don't die, it causes real havoc and emotion of people who are left behind and don't know what happened to that person. And they can make up whatever they want as their story, and they'll believe it because they've got no way to tell the validity as to whether it's true or false. And so I'm not sure that there's such thing as universal truth, that maybe truth is personal and comes from a perspective, and that different people can hold different truths, even opposite truths, and both be correct in from their own perspective.
Yeah, I think as you move through, certainly with me, the experience I've had as I move through, sometimes my mind flips to the opposite in like the space of a couple of days. And I can look at the world in a totally opposite perspective for a while, and then I'll flip back, and then I'll flip to the opposite again. So I tend not to have the same position more than a couple of days at a time. There's always a conversation or something in the news or something that makes you question it. So I'm not sure that anything's real, but that's just my kind of extreme skeptical approach, which is why I have trouble with the no doubt manifestation idea. But I only have trouble with it because most of the time I'm skeptical, and when I'm manifesting, I'm not. I have to not allow myself to be skeptical.
Yeah,
So I have to be both at the same time.
it's a matter of being in control of your belief system. And if you change a belief, you really have to look at it. If you change a belief, you have to look at it from the new perspective, compare the new perspective to the old perspective, and then deal with the ramifications of the change. And most of the time, there aren't ramifications in changing a belief, but I think most of our beliefs are built from the information that is presented to us by the society or by the live stream that we're living, and that we can we can find people who will be contrary to us if we want to have a good argument. We will find people who will be sympathetic to us if we want people to follow what we say. But implementing anything different from what people actually know, even though they don't know what they know and aren't correct in what they believe, we've all been through this same school system that has put the same perspective on everybody's plate. And if you default to that perspective, the system rewards you. Whereas if you disagree with that perspective, you draw trolls and other people who want you to cease and desist and come back into the group that believes the way they do.
Yeah. I mean, it takes me a long time. I remember I came across a, a law of attraction group called Powerful Intentions online about 10 years ago or more. probably 12 or 13 years ago. And I was hanging around there for a little while. I couldn't get anything kind of moving, but I was very into my Reiki at the time. So I was kind of talking about Reiki a lot in there, and it wasn't that kind of group. So there was a bit of a mismatch. But this is where the Neville Goddard interest comes from. One of the people in that group that I started talking to, we were talking about manifestation techniques, and she was talking about Neville Goddard, and at that point I'd never heard of Neville Goddard at all, and I thought, well, I think he just started coming up online a lot, and I thought, well, I'll take a look, and I had a look, and I was interested, but it didn't match with the way I did things with Reiki, particularly. So I just put it to one side, and then I discovered Immunix, and that kind of Reiki took a back seat from there. So I changed the way that I do things a little bit with my healing, and Immunix has got a law of attraction kind of element to it. It's got some built-in things with the gravitational body, particularly, that are designed to remove obstacles from that manifestation process. So once I discovered Immunix, I went back to Neville Goddard, and then Neville Goddard fits with Immunix really, really well. So the two fit together. So I always look for things that kind of match in that kind of way. So I'm not changing my overall belief system. I'm changing kind of small pieces of it.
Well, you're essentially building a narrative that hasn't existed within the paradigm. So you're taking pieces of things that you believe, merging them, and getting a larger construct that holds in more places. And as you apply it and see where it holds, as long as it seems to continue to benefit you, you expand on the process, and gradually you're growing a new belief system that Immunix works. Neville Goddard explains how it works. Now, the real key for me will be when you get your medical professionals to measure the difference in function of your two kidneys, and we see that your left kidney is vastly more functional than your right kidney, that would be passing the burden of proof that your belief system works in the function of healing you.
I had a conversation with my kidney consultant about a week and a half ago, and she said there's nothing on the blood tests that indicates that the kidneys are improving. Well, I mean, that's possible, but I think there's no way that they can tell between the left and the right. So even if it was just an incremental change in the left kidney, they wouldn't be able to pick it up.
Do they do ultrasound or any other type of measurement that actually physically allows you to see the two kidneys?
I've had an ultrasound. I had an ultrasound about this time last year. But I asked my consultant about another ultrasound, and she said all it would do would show you the size and shape of the kidneys. It wouldn't show you the function.
Well, that's okay. The size and shape changing would imply that the function is changing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, potentially, yeah.
I mean, you couldn't tell.
Maybe
Yeah, maybe your kidney has to get smaller rather than bigger to function properly, but at least size and shape would give you a first order approximation that yes, there is a difference, but in essence, you'd have to take your ultrasound now and compare it to the one from a year ago and see if there are differences in the size and shape of each kidney relative to itself a year ago as opposed to relative to each other.
Yeah, I couldn't convince the consultant to send me for another ultrasound, unfortunately. He said it wouldn't make any difference, but I do have to go for some tests because she's putting me on the transplant list, which means I've got to go for some tests to look at the blood supply. because they need to make sure the blood supply is right so they can connect a new kidney to whatever it is they do. I don't want to know the details, quite honestly. I'm just going to let them knock me out and give me the kidney.
Once you go out on the table, you want to wake up with a new kidney and have it make you feel better so that you can get back into a more normalized life. Although, to tell you the truth, I don't know about the human normalized lives anymore.
Yeah, no, that's another situation where I need to let go of the doubt. Because if I go into that operation with doubt, it's going to produce complications, I think, in the way that my head works. So I want to go in without all my questions and all my doubts. So that's what I'm going to use the Immunix for, I think, as much as anything. So it'll be, because I know it'll work on doubt. I know it'll work on like doubt is paranoia, basically, to some extent. It's questioning, and it's the opposite of certainty, isn't it? So it's kind of doubt and paranoia are kind of a doubt and fear or whatever is a similar thing. So I know I can let go of a lot of fear and a lot of doubt, and I know I measured my paranoia level, and it came down to about less than 1 from 5 or 6 when I took that out. So I know that works.
Do it again in another week, because gradually, as you're in the world, your paranoia level will increase, and you might not even notice it because it's extremely low. And if it goes from extremely low to very low, that incrementally isn't much, but compared to the size of extremely low, it might be a lot. And so repeating Immunix over time to go back into the situation and rest it back at a good initial position for you. The way I look at it is, if you believe that you can get to your personal ground state and be grounded and ready for anything, then the operation to replace your kidneys will replace the kidneys. You'll feel something different. And I'm sort of interested, if you get somebody else's kidneys, do they come with some of their memories?
Probably they do. I've spoken to people, I've had conversations with people where, because there's a story about somebody getting a liver transplant and then being able to paint that I've heard, and it's an apocryphal story. I don't know whether it's true or not, but it kind of makes sense that you would get some of the consciousness of the person that organ had been in. So whatever it is, I'm hoping I'll get a genius's kidney.
I'll donate one to you if our blood types are okay.
That would. I don't know whether the 8,000-mile difference.
It might. But, what's your blood type anyway?
I don't know, to be honest with you. It's not something I've ever really checked. It'll be on my record, but I don't really know. I'll leave all of that to the doctor.
I don't trust doctors enough to leave anything to them, and haven't seen one in a long time. But I also don't need to have my kidney replaced. For reference, I'm O positive, or at least I was the last time I checked. In this world now, with Mandela effects, you never know. Your blood type can change, and you'd never know, because it's the world changing the shade of the color of the overlay. And I think as more people start thinking outside the box, the narrative and the paradigm are going to start changing significantly. And the paradigm is the whole big system of what we've been taught and how it all works together. The narrative is the individual way we get through the paradigm. And so there's probably nodes in the paradigm that are in every narrative. The 2001 attack on the World Trade Center probably happened in every paradigm within our human existence of the people who are. But it wouldn't surprise me at all to find at a different level of frequency, we could find Aztecs and Hopi and people who were in past worlds who just sort of evolved out of it because it was time to go. And they're in a different mental plateau, but everything works for them and they don't recognize the frequency of resonance of modern day current Earth, which I'm not even sure is resident to itself. The resonance form I see is a lot of people bickering and arguing with each other over things that really don't matter in the essence of things, and the leadership of the world focusing on making money through wars, which to me, no interest. Don't want to play war, don't want to make money. Although I do need money to survive, it's a fluidized economy, and I look at money in humans as electricity in housing. You got to have some to lubricate what's going on. If you don't have electricity in your house, there's too many things you can't do in that house. If you don't have money as a human, there's too many things you can't do.
Yeah, it's a limiting factor, definitely, or an expanding factor. Yeah, one of the things that I might have told you this already, but I'll say it again because it's a live stream, not radio. Just before I went to New Zealand in January 2001, I went for a tarot reading with a woman who'd been reading for like 30 years, and she'd been doing like remote viewing, and she was a journalist. She was all sorts of things. Well, interesting. And so I went this September or the end of November 2000, and it cost me a lot of money. It's the most money I've ever spent on a tarot reading, but it was good. It was worth. One of the things she told me was worth the money. And the thing that she told me was, don't fly in August and September next year because it'll be dangerous to fly. Which is not too vague. That's specific enough that because I was going to New Zealand in the January and coming back in the April, she said, you'll want to stay on. If you stay on, come back before August because it will not be safe to fly. So to me, that's evident. Well, I know where she got it from. She got it from the astrology because there was a during August and September, and I figured out later on where she got the predictions from. There's a guy called Robert Zoller, who's a Western kind of medieval Western astrologer. He uses old Arabic techniques that turned out to be very, very good indeed. I used one of his techniques to predict the gender and timing of a birth of a baby for somebody before they even got pregnant. But I was speaking to their mother, and their mother described the situation, and I did this all in my head based on the date of birth. But there's a way of counting. It's called counting houses. Daria is the technique where you count from the date of birth through and work out what's the dominant planet in the house, and that'll tell you the timing of the birth, and it'll tell you the gender because planets have gender as well. So it'll tell you the gender of the birth as well. So I did this at a Christmas party at an Astrological Lodge of London Christmas party while I had a glass of wine in my hand, just talking to this woman on this month. It'd be next year. I knew it was next year. When I worked it all out, it was the following year, and I worked out the months from the houses, and worked out the gender, and told her the gender and the birth timing from just the date of birth and one medieval astrology technique. I saw the following Christmas, and she told me that it was accurate, so I know that was accurate. I'm not just making that up. But it's a very good technique. I haven't used it for years. I haven't had any real need to use astrology for years. But
I've recently come across astrology again in conjunction with human design and the gene keys. And apparently, human design relies a lot on the astrology, not only your birth time, but also your conception time, which they calculate out. And by using astrology and the human design and the gene keys sort of as an I Ching, where there's 64 different concepts and you can roll your coins and stack up and have things tell you what's going on. Well, I had done the I Ching for years back in the 2000s. It was my source of solace. Was every day I'd pick up my little yellow book and roll the coins and play with the lines that they gave me, and I could actually interpret when the lines had to change, and it was pretty good. Hey, you've now doubled on screen. How did you manage to do that?
I dropped out and had to go back in again, but it hasn't dropped my previous person. There we go.
Oh, now it has. That was a pretty neat trick. I had two Dennises, and they probably lived in different resonant worlds. And so that tells me that there are indeed different resonant worlds. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, having to do with my group theory stuff. And I could use some help in defining some terms, and in the groups that I'm in, I can see that people come from different ethics, different morals, and use different logic. And we've got some people trying to set up structures that reinforce their morals and ethics upon other people in the group who might not have as high morals and ethics. And I was wondering if that's not an ego trip on their part to tell other people how they should behave, or whether the ethics and morals, at least at some point, are at a base standard that we expect everybody to uphold.
It's difficult to tell, really. It depends.
We can put this answer off till next week,
Yeah.
because it's something worth thinking about. But and that I take as a function of the schools, not of the way people think. But the outliers in the system, the people who don't follow what's going on in the system, but think about how to do things better, that's starting to grow as a movement, but it's not people getting together to group think it. It's individuals getting in themselves and taking their own personal perspective and applying it to other situations. Now, I know that personally, I consider my ethics pretty good and my morals not so great. But the thing is, I never really act on my morals unless it comes to a point where, okay, I've had enough, I'm leaving, and I check out. But when I check out, I don't check back in later to see if anything's changed. I just sort of check out. Now, ethics and morals, if we're grouping different, are going to have to come through in some way, because if an entire group has a bunch of ethical people except for one unethical person, it's ripe for the unethical person to take advantage of the trusting nature of all the ethical people. And I'd like to get the philosophy of groups correct in small number groups, so that when it expands to large number groups, we know what we're dealing with. There's sort of a polarity in life that we can look at as a yin and a yang, and they breathe, they change sizes, but yin never totally defeats yang, and yang never totally defeats yin. There's also the third way that's outside of yin and yang, and it's like if you flip a coin, you can get heads or tails, but why couldn't it land on its edge? And then it would be neither head nor tail, but it was still a valid coin flip. It just landed on the edge. And so I like to think that I'm on that edge and looking at the yin and yang, the flow back and forth of how things work, and thinking, well, that's not how things have to work. It's a matter of structuring things at different levels. And the idea that I have is that human scale should be inviolate, that you as a human should be entitled to your way of thought. And if people can convince you to change it, well and good. If people want to enforce you to change it, what is their motivation that they're trying to enforce you to change your mind? And we all control our minds, or at least we think we do. But the mind control known as MK Ultra and the just what you have in the media with the hidden messages subtly underneath all the Bernays techniques, it just isn't a fair playing field. And the logic that goes into developing morals and ethics really could use specific learning or specific focus, so that we look at what we believe it should be and we look at what it is, and we try and correlate the what it is to what we believe it should be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in the opposite situation with the philosophy group, because I'm arguing in favor of some very broad general rules, and none of the people in the philosophy group want to have any rules at all about behavior or about structure or about anything. They just want to be able to do what they do, which is fine. I've got no problem with that. I just want to do what I do as well. But I've been in situations where it would have been useful to have one or two basic rules where it got
Yeah,
out of hand, or it got
like there's a
it
rule that
became
if you start yelling at the person you're discussing something with, you lose your argument.
yeah. See, that wouldn't apply in our philosophy group. It's pretty much like you can say more or less anything, and you can do well. They draw the line at throwing cutlery, throwing crockery around. That was a limit. And they draw the line at swearing to some extent. You're not really allowed to swear at people, but you can call them every name under the sun as long as you don't swear.
You see, that seems to me to be totally counterproductive to a reasonable conversation on anything.
Yeah,
I wonder
yeah. I mean,
if you could track people's demeanors in a conversation. I mean, if we're having a conversation like this, anybody outside can watch the video and see when one or the other of us is triggered. But if we get bigger conversations on specific topics, it might be useful to find that when people are triggered, you know you've hit a sore spot. Maybe that's a place to go deeper in the philosophy.
Absolutely. Yeah, we could probably program AI to do that somewhere down the line because it can pull out all the verbal signals, all the vocal signals, its tone of voice and everything.
It would be
So it should
interesting.
be able
Yeah, it would be, that would be something that could tell us when something has happened and signaled. AI is good for measuring things, bad for integrating what it's hearing into the reality. And so I wouldn't mind setting up, in fact, I'm working with someone else to set up a room where conversations have clocks and can be tracked. And afterwards, the download is given, and we build index of topics and maybe a glossary of words, and have the AI putting together sort of the field of the new way so that we we get feedback. But I think on at every different point, it's the humans that will need to see the product of the AI is in fact correct and not a hallucination. And
yeah,
I've I've seen it in action now, where the AI taping a conversation and coming back with its summary has gotten some basic things wrong that bias the whole summary. A group hearing a presentation about somebody in another group, and the AI took it to be our group that they were presenting on and started changing our function based on what this individual had seen in this other group. And really,
right.
the notes were useless.
That's a fundamental misunderstanding of what's been happening as well.
Well, I think that the AI is programmed to fundamentally misunderstand and to come back and give you the same answers that it was programmed with, no matter how you address the problem. And that in itself, I see as a major problem.
Yeah, it is. That is. It's very good at writing scripts for Doctor Who, though. I've been doing a little bit of that here and there.
Well, I want to start bringing some friends in on our conversations. I know my theosophy friend is extremely interested in talking to you. He's been watching our conversations, but hasn't quite gotten up to the speed where he's ready yet. The timing's always wrong, but he's in your neck of the woods in England. And so
Right.
having the two of you have a conversation can then lead to conversations that you guys can have anytime, that you don't need me Lenny time to be in on the
Yeah.
conversation to get to places. And his gig was the spiritual high table and defining
Right.
how things should work in integration with that. And in explaining it to people, they're always on board with the morals and ethics and that sort of thing, but not with the work that it takes to actually build to it. And he had an X group and got targeted. I guess he got too big or was saying too many things they didn't like. And somebody moved in, assumed his identity, changed a whole bunch of things, and all of a sudden he was aced out of his own groups.
Right. It's not good. It's not good.
I noticed that we're on to about an hour, and we've agreed to
Yeah.
limit this show to an hour because anything longer becomes difficult to watch.
Yeah.
Actually, anything longer than 8 minutes is difficult to watch for most people, but we'll see how it all goes. As a point of note, I noticed that Lizzie put out a video today with a bunch of little birds in it. And so Shout out to Lizzie, a friend of ours who I haven't talked to for quite a while, but I miss. It's just that Skype is no longer functional, and so I just didn't load it on my new computer. And she was a Skype connection.
Yeah, I haven't got Lizzie's email address, I don't think. I will see if she's online in Skype and message her that way, and try and stay connected that way. She's on Podbean as well, so I'll see her sometimes on Podbean. But,
Tell her I said hello.
yeah, I mean, sure. I will if I see her. I will definitely if I see her. I haven't seen her for a while, but now and again she shows up and says hello. But she's never actually. I don't think she's ever actually had a conversation with me that I could record. So it's about time me and Lizzie had another conversation, I think.
That would be good. She has a different perspective on everything.
Absolutely, and a very interesting perspective as well. Very interesting. All right, Lenny, I think we'll wrap it up at that point. And I'll probably see you next week or maybe the week after. Depends what mood I'm in on the Wednesday when I'm deciding what to do. So potentially next Thursday, though.
Okay. And let me know if you want me to bring another friend along, and we'll set up a fringe encounter that works a little better than the one we had with Harris, because I think I talked too much in that one. It was supposed to be you and Harris talking to each other, and I got involved too much in the conversation.
It'll work itself out. It'll be fine next time. All right, Lenny, I shall see you again next week. Have a good week.
You be well, Dennis, and good luck on your medical pursuits. Let's hope that the Immunix helps you cope until the kidney transplant comes.
Yeah, I think I'm clear enough and certain enough about what it can do now that I know how to apply it to specific things, and I'm not expecting too much on the physical kidneys, but on the psychological side, it's very, very useful. I mean, it did work for my heart, so there's no real reason why it shouldn't work for the kidneys. It just doesn't seem to be working, and I don't know why. But
Probably because the stress of you wanting to see it work is preventing it from working. Just get to your ground state and let it be, and send thoughts to the water in the kidneys, and maybe it can help control the structure to lighten the load a little bit, and that might increase the flow a little more. And just, I don't know, we could do a guided meditation, visiting your kidneys and telling him how to relax and regain function. But something physically happened that they're not functioning. And I don't know that any mental imagery can overcome that physical limitation. On the other hand, maybe the physical limitations are all imaginary based on our learning experience, and there doesn't need to be a mechanism for healing for somebody to heal.
Yeah, that's possible. That's possible. So I'm gonna mess about with it and see what kind of feels right. That's the only way I can do it, really. I've had kind of conversational things with my kidneys before now, and it didn't really feel like it was doing very much. Whereas Immunix does. I've got a feedback loop going on with Immunix, so I'm more comfortable doing that, and kind of I've just got to play with it and find the right thing to take out and the right thing to put in.
And don't push too hard, and don't worry about the bearing of the results. They will come about when you get it right and have the pathway that works.
Yeah, I'm just taking it easy. I've got 2 years anyway, so there's plenty of time. So it'll be a couple of years before I get a kidney at least. All right,
All right.
that's it for now. Thanks for coming in.
Have a good one. Take care.
Bye now.